tried to hold us back, to hold us, tried to hold us back.
We will be here forever. Do you understand? Forever.
Hey, it's Shan here. This week I speak with super interesting human, Mr. Nathan Ho. Nathan is an article writer for Slam Skateboarding magazine in Australia. He's a breathwork specialist. He's a cold exposure facilitator. He's a teacher. He's a clairvoyant. And he's the co-author of the book, The Endless Wave, Skateboarding, Death and Spirituality. We had a great day, Nathan and I started the morning with him doing one of his breathwork workshops down on the beach at Cronulla, followed by literally the coldest ice bath I've ever had. We're talking just like slushy ice with a bit of water in it, and I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about the fight or flight response, and Nathan really talked me through it. We delve into the physiology behind breathing and breath work and also cold exposure. Nathan shares really openly about his high sensitivity in regards to feelings and energies, and his journey into becoming a clairvoyant and supporting and helping people that way as well. It's a super good chat. I really liked it. It goes off on some tangents. We start to analyse some bigger existential questions, which I really enjoyed, and Nathan brings a lot to the plate. I learn a lot from him, so hope you enjoy it. And as always, dedicated to my children, Clementine and Otis.
Tried to hold us, they tried to hold us back, forced to be vain.
Child of the crayon, child of the light, stars of the neon belong to a culture destined to rock for eons. Time doesn't exist, shut those cataracts, capture the virtualist. Now, let's get back to what makes things seem forever, whether it's unseen, unheard, or it's 16 again. Not a bother, fill this old man river, kill a floor that gives all.
So the mouth taping is something that encourages your body to close its mouth while you sleep. And so by doing so, you reduce the chance of overbreathing. And just generally through nose breathing throughout the day, it helps to increase our nitric oxide, which is essential for things like inflammation, relaxation, helping with our blood circulation. And when we nose breathe, we return ourselves to a natural breathing rhythm or a natural breathing flow. And so by taping your mouth while you sleep, it reduces the breathing volume, which helps you to overall get a better sleep without expelling or expending too much of your energy.
Yeah, right. So because you're taking less or slower breaths, that's also settling the central nervous system?
Yeah, absolutely. And physiologically, our bodies are naturally wired to breathe deeply into the diaphragm. Like if you notice when you breathe in and out through your nose, it travels all the way down into your diaphragm. Whereas if you breathe in through your mouth, most of the time, the breath only travels around the shoulders and the chest. And so what tends to happen is if you predominantly mouth breathe, the rest of your diaphragm, or your diaphragm in general, isn't getting what it needs in terms of a full capacity breath. So you're actually using up more energy and more effort to do the same job, basically, with your breathing.
So it increases the volume of breaths.
Yeah. But,
high frequency.
Well, mouth breathing, yes, it tends to increase the frequency and decrease the efficiency of every breath.
Right. So therefore you're not waking up feeling as refreshed and revived.
Yeah, you'll have a shitter quality of sleep if your mouth is wide open when you're sleeping.
Yeah. But to clarify, the mouth taping, it's not your whole mouth, like you're not sealing up your lips, right?
No, it's just a strip that goes vertically along your lips.
Wow. Is it something you do regularly?
Yeah, every night almost.
And how many years have you been doing it, you think?
Coming up to about a year. I started in last November. And I've noticed, I wake up feeling way more refreshed. I don't wake up through the night. Because usually what happens if you, say, if your mouth is wide open, might lead to, say, snoring. People can get restless legs if they're mouth breathing while they sleep, or frequently having to go to the toilet, or having nightmares, or really unsettled sleep. And so the mouth breathing really helps to bring balance to the breath, and it just comes back to that Buddhist saying, how you do one thing is how you do everything.
Yes.
And so it's like, if you find a way to find balance and stability in your breath during the day, you'll also find it in the night. And if you find a way to bring stability to that in the night, it'll come through and reflect on your day. And so the quality of your sleep reflects into the quality of the day that you're going to have following.
Whew. Dude, I love this. Were you having poor sleep?
I used to wake up to go to the toilet a lot. And as a child, I used to, quite frequently wake up, or, be quite unsettled, or some nights even take longer to go to sleep, would be hard for me to drift off. And I imagine that it can be quite difficult to drift off to sleep, say, if you are mouth breathing a lot predominantly. Because when you think about it from a physiological point of view, when we mouth breathe, we're typically breathing faster. And as we breathe faster, it's like we're putting an accelerator on our nervous system, which puts us into that fight or flight response. And so if we're in this state of being alert, it can be difficult for us to relax and settle. And our mind is still quite active. When we're breathing faster, it's like we're looking for those threats and those dangers still. And it's like, if you can learn to slow down your breath, and this is where nose breathing comes in, if we can learn to slow down our breath, we enter what's known as the parasympathetic state, which is ideal and optimal for our rest, recovery, and relaxation.
I have heard that this life is all about not how many years you'll live, it's about how many breaths you take. Have you heard that?
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard that from lots of different sources, actually.
So therefore, if you slow down your breathing and are able to reduce the amount of breaths your body's taking in a minute, for example, you're extending your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting is that if you research the lifespan of different animals, you'll see that based on the number of breaths they take, the number of years in their lifespan actually differs according to that. And another thing that's interesting is that, say, in the past 100 years, our humans' average breaths per minute was much lower than what it is currently sitting at today. So about 100 years ago, it was something like 5 to 10. And say within the past 50 years, 50, 25 years, it's gone up to something like 15 to 25 breaths per minute. Like, say, if you look at medical advisory boards.
Like on average?
Yeah, so humans' breaths per minute has gone up, and they're saying that this is normal. But when you think about, all the different stresses and all the different things that have affected our lives, and to say that that's normal because everyone's just breathing faster and no one's actually questioning, well, why are we breathing faster? And, what's it actually doing for us?
Or they're taking a new average.
Yeah.
So that data is interesting. Do you feel that it's representative of bigger issues in society?
Absolutely.
It has to be, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like when we're unwell, we overbreathe, and when we overbreathe, we make ourselves unwell. And it's like that chicken or the egg kind of scenario. And so why aren't people questioning that more?
I've always questioned it because I feel like there's like 3 fundamental things a human needs to do to exist, and it's eat, breathe, and drink water. And it astounds me how many people do not prioritize those things in their daily life. So they will go for cheap food options, that processed food or foods that lack nutrients and things like that. They'll also not drink water all day, just drink coffee or soft drinks, and not consciously breathing. I don't know. And yeah, going in line with what you were saying, like I see and I know a lot of very stressed out people. So as a breath worker yourself, are you finding over the years that more people are being drawn to this practice?
I would definitely say it's getting a lot of traction in the sense that more and more people are looking at ways to prioritize their wellness. And I think what's beautiful about breathwork is it's not that it's just one technique or it's just one style as, you know, something that applies and fits everyone, but it can be adapted and suited to and tailored to different people's needs. And the beautiful thing is that everybody breathes. So because everybody breathes, there's something in it for everyone, and it's accessible, and, you know, it reaches all people if they're willing to engage with it and do the work.
Yeah, because there's a difference between breathing and then consciously breathing, like what we did this morning on the beach.
Absolutely.
Now, I want to actually pick your brain here a little bit. So during the session that you ran with us, I followed the protocol that you were running. I was hallucinating this morning. Now, I've done a lot of breath work in terms of the Wim Hof style of breath, and I really enjoy holding my breath. I don't know why. I love it. I love the feeling. I get this deep sense of relaxation. And then when I feel the struggling build, I've actually learnt that, you know, you can hold that for longer than you think. And I think they said something like, you know, you start to gulp.
Yeah.
Apparently you can do that 40 times. So I start counting the amount of gulps and I'm like, I've still got ages to go. And it actually tells my brain that, hey, you can go longer. But this morning was different. Like I started getting this crazy light show. You know, I was seeing these colours and I actually had this vision of an eye looking at me sideways, like clear as day.
Beautiful.
I didn't want to say that to you on the beach in front of everyone because I was like, this guy's a tripper. My question to you is, sorry, it's a long question, but was I releasing DMT?
When we breathe at a certain rate and intensity, it is possible for us to access or to unlock those parts of the brain which, you know, do release things like DMT, particularly because we're breathing in a way that switches or, you know, makes the prefrontal cortex go offline. And basically that's like our human brain that is responsible for like decision making, logic, analysis. And it's like when we breathe ourselves into this space, it just temporarily goes offline. And what's happening is we're breathing ourselves deeper into our subconscious and we're accessing things like our limbic system, our subconscious, and these deeper layers of our consciousness. Now, this morning was just a small snippet of what of a much, much bigger picture. But say if you were to practice this on a regular basis, say like a weekly or a fortnightly kind of basis, and do the kind of journeying that comes with it, it can really help to work through and process like a lot of unresolved emotions and buried emotions, unresolved stress, tension and trauma that comes from varied life experiences.
Yeah, because this morning I started to get some really uneasy feelings come up and like things I didn't want to even think about, but they were coming up and emotions that were just yucky emotions. And we started to end the session. I felt really good and relieved. Like I just like let something go.
Yeah. So what's happening is when we're breathing at a faster intensity with, say, more intention and more intensity, we're breathing faster to activate the sympathetic nervous system, which is like we're putting the body under stress through breathing. And what's happening is it might bring up old feelings or old emotions or old sensations. And just breathing with more speed and more intensity helps to activate this. And let's just say the body has its own stress cycle. If the body doesn't get a chance to complete the stress cycle, what happens is we end up just burying or storing this tension, say, in different parts of our bodies, whether it be like our diaphragm, our shoulders, our neck, our jaw, wherever it is that it might be stored. We breathe ourselves to a certain towards a certain direction that it brings it all to the surface, and we breathe through a tipping point where eventually we have the opportunity to let this go.
So most people, they do experience a variety of stresses in one day, and then they overcome one obstacle, and then they go straight on to the next. And so they're pushing it down.
Yeah.
I mean,
or other times it's like, you're sitting in a meeting or something and you're starting to get agitated or you're starting to get stressed, and you might not always have the opportunity to let this go, because say you're sitting in a meeting and everyone expects you to sit still and be an adult and participate and be attentive. But where does that tension go? We just stuff it down, just gets swept under the rug.
So even that's a stressor.
Yeah.
Like being forced to do something you don't want to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's most people.
Yeah, and so we need to find ways to release built-up tension. And so things like breath work can help to dig deep into our nervous system and just pull it apart and put it back together again.
What do you think the most common outcomes of not addressing that is?
Well, it's quite common for us to, say, stuff down our emotions or sweep them under the carpet. And then this can usually translate into things like say panic attacks for people that build it up over a long period of time, or repressed anger outbursts. It can turn people towards different vices so that they can escape the tension or the unresolved emotions. It can turn us towards telling unconscious stories or playing out behaviors, beliefs and patterns that we just continue to keep replaying until we actually face it and confront it and deal with it.
Were they things that you did personally?
Absolutely. I was a heavy drinker when I was about 18, 19, 20. Any opportunity to let loose, I'd let loose and go all out. It was not just have a quiet beer or have a quiet drink with someone. It was just go hard or go home.
But isn't that culturally normal for people in our society at that age range?
Absolutely.
So I don't think it's more of a rite of passage?
I think there are better ways around it. And, it doesn't always have to be alcohol. Like, people might have other vices, like they might have, like, say, addictions to, like, television or, addictions to, like, caffeine or other kinds of drugs. Might have addictions to sex and other things like consumerism, like whatever it is that you give your power away to as a way of trying to escape something.
Is that what you were doing though at that age? Did you feel like you had things to run away from?
Yeah, definitely. Used to have a lot of social anxiety.
Why, you think?
I'm not sure. I just used to always feel like really unsettled in social situations, and I just didn't know how to process that, and I didn't know how to handle that. And probably my anxiety came from things like, feeling bullied or insecure about myself as a teenager.
Were you bullied as a teenager?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you mind telling us in what way? Was it physical? Was it social, emotional?
Yeah, a bit of all of them. I guess one of the things was there was racial bullying, like when I was much younger. Yeah, I know in this day and age, but it still happens. Especially going to a school where I was the only in a school full of like surfies and Caucasians. I was like the only Asian.
Name
at
the school.
Yeah,
No, name the area. Do you mind?
yeah, Cronulla.
In the Sutherland Shire area?
Yeah, I was in Cronulla.
I mean, I grew up on the south coast of New
Yeah.
South Wales, so...
Yeah, so there was a bit of bullying in high school, and
really, like you said, you said the only person from Asian descent.
yeah,
You felt like that. Was that actually true?
no, I was the only Asian in my year.
Really?
In my school.
Wow. Do you feel like people needed to categorize you then as the Asian, or label you that?
I feel like I stood out, so I was always like really self-conscious of that, and I think because things like that were unresolved, that carried on to like the patterns that I'd formed around my interactions, and so I always felt really insecure about how I presented myself, like in social situations, and I feel like this carried on as I got a little bit older and, away from that whole space of the Shire. I just felt like it carried on. And
Were you struggling to identify with people?
probably that as well, struggling to identify and struggling to make connections.
Do you feel like people, like you were willing to make connections, but people were reluctant to do so?
I think in some ways, and I feel like, I felt like I couldn't relate to them. I was a skateboarder, and everyone was kind of surfies, and there weren't any skaters in my school, or
Really?
they were just the guys that they say, oh, I used to skate.
People have been saying I used to skate forever.
Yeah, there's always those people that used to.
I still say it. When I can't land a trick, I used to skate. I used to be able to do that.
Yeah.
It's pretty pathetic, really. Do you mind if I ask, were you born here?
Yeah, I was born here.
And how did your family come about to be in the Sutherland area?
Well, my family don't actually live in the Sutherland area.
Okay.
We grew up in Beverly Hills, but my parents...
So more inner Western Sydney?
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, my parents are from Hong Kong.
Okay.
And so my mum's father, like my grandpa, he came out in the 40s to work by himself.
Pre-war?
Yeah, actually, no, wait, maybe it was the 50s, after the war.
World War II was 55.
Yeah, it must have been after the war.
After World War I, before World War II, maybe.
Yeah, so pretty sure it was the 50s. Yeah, correct me on that.
Interesting.
Yeah, so he came out.
As a refugee?
No, not as a refugee. He came out here, I think, during like the early waves of...
Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, during the early waves of like migrants, and set himself up as a chef in Chinatown, I believe, out in the city. And yeah, he ended up training a lot of like the respectable chefs around Sydney in the Chinese space.
Interesting.
And so by the time he, I think by about the 60s, when my mum was about 13 or 14, he was able to bring them all out here. Wow. So his wife and 4 kids.
See, that's what I mean. Like, so he came out here by himself to work hard to make enough money to bring his family out. Like, that's what my grandfather George did on my dad's side, because they're Maltese descent.
Yeah.
And he moved from Malta, like post World War II,
Yeah.
to the country was just completely devastated, and came out here by himself, away from his wife and 7 kids, and worked for 3 years without seeing them at all, just to raise enough funds to get them here, and then got them here, and they landed in projects in Redfern. And it was brutal, a brutal time for migrants. They were just not only displaced but disregarded and not accepted.
Yeah.
Do your parents and grandparents relay stories similar?
I think my mum's told me a few times of like, how difficult it felt when she first came out, and, didn't really speak the language, and everything was so different. And she always tells me like it just felt like such a relief for her to see like other Chinese people, you know, they have that innate connection, that cultural connection. It's like a sight for sore eyes, I guess.
Like they bond because like, hey, I know what you've been through.
Yeah, I think that's it. And I think even still to this day, like, you know, because I don't really hang out with Asian people, when they do enter my space, like whether it be in skateboarding or like, you know, in breath work or any other avenues, it's like when they're in that space, it's like I just feel that bond with them because I can feel like they probably go through something similar in a cultural sense.
Did you feel accepted by skateboarders? Is that why you were drawn to it? Or did you just do it off your own volition?
For me, skateboarding felt like a place of non-judgment, and it was just like, you know, all the barriers, all the boundaries are just dropped and you're just there to skate together. Like you don't care what culture someone's from. You don't care how much money their family has. You don't care like what school they go to or what job they have. You're just there to skate together and have a good time. And
yeah, but it's changed. But back in the day, there was that.
Yeah.
But also there was a hierarchy of skaters too. So the better you skated, the more you were accepted. So if you weren't a good skater, sometimes skaters would reject other skaters because they didn't skate good or they were a kook because they were wearing clothes that weren't cool.
Right.
So I found there was that as well. But that's changed. But did you experience things like that or were you just like a really good skater?
I think I had to work hard for it and probably wasn't the most coordinated, but I don't think I ever experienced that hierarchy growing up in Sydney.
Interesting. That's so cool. Were you a good student at school?
Yeah, pretty hardworking, I guess.
Did you have tiger parents?
Yeah, I think in some way, yeah, you know, Asian background, but I guess I have just an innate love of learning. So
I can tell because I'm sitting across from you and I've sort of spent the morning with you and I see a really like successful human in what I now gauge as successful. I see someone who was inspiring a group of people this morning, living with some purpose. You know, you also maintain a family and a full-time job. And you also, I think you said you do other breathwork workshops at gyms and things like that. I wonder if there's this underlying desire or responsibility to feel like you have to achieve to respect your forefathers or your heritage. Do you ever feel that? Sometimes they call it survivor guilt.
I haven't actually thought about that, but I don't feel like part of me probably does feel like, you know, they work their asses to get out here and I should be upholding and, you know, doing my share of trying to make the world a better place. And I shouldn't just be sitting on my ass all day doing nothing because, you know, at the end of the day, let's face it, nothing comes for free in this reality and we can't just sit around and do nothing because you need to live a life with purpose.
In this reality?
Yeah.
How do you feel about other realities?
Well, there are other realities which are the ones where we say we try to escape to, and they're like the short-term fixes. It's like something comes up and, you know, it's like you want to run away and you want to get away from what you're facing. And so these short-term fixes come as a way of distracting you from the actual work or the actual intention that you need to build and grow on.
Are you sort of referring to more like hedonistic pursuits?
I think so.
Yeah, okay. What about, you know, if we talk about this life we're living, this is a deep question, but where are you at with what happens after this life? Because I mean, I felt this morning when we were doing the breath workshop and you were using an array of different instruments, which were probably created by indigenous tribes of various incarnations around the world. And there was something very special about those sounds. And I just felt like if you're drawn to something like that, I just sense that there's a spirituality about you as well.
Yeah.
So where do you feel like you stand with that?
So about your question about where we go next, was that your
Okay.
question?
Sorry, it was a multi-layered question.
It was.
When I was really trying to say, are you spiritual?
Yeah, I'm spiritual. We're all spiritual. We're all spiritual beings.
Are you religious?
In a human body. No, I'm not religious.
Are you family?
Well, we grew up Catholic, but I kind of felt like I grew out of it or moved away from that after high school. So it wasn't something that I felt like I chose to be in. So I didn't really feel like it resonated with me, and more just something that was there and not something that I pursued out of my own interest.
Interesting. So you feel like we're all spiritual.
Yeah, absolutely. Like,
What does that look like?
so it can look very different to everyone, but I think at the end of the day, the underlying thing is being spiritual means we're connected to ourselves and connected to each other. And the realization that we connect to something much bigger than ourselves, like beyond our own consciousness. And sometimes it can be quite difficult to put that into words because sometimes there aren't the words to describe what can be so multi-layered and multifaceted.
I don't know about you, but when I consider that concept that you mentioned, it just fills me with peace.
Yeah.
And I've resisted it for so long. And I see other people resisting it. I mean, I'm like, and I don't even know why I'm resisting it. It was challenging me. And I think it's, and then when you sort of surrender to it, that's when the peace comes. And then it's like when I do see people who are devoutly religious, whatever it is, Hindu, Buddhist, Christian, you can't deny that. I mean, you meet a Buddhist monk who devotes their life to spirituality and prayer and ceremony and meditation. You can't deny that you feel they radiate a peace, and you feel that when you're around them, and they're calm and content. And they're really living the same experience as us. They're still in human bodies. So it's been a bit of a long journey for me, but I think I'm getting there in the end.
Absolutely. I think when we start to feel that connection to something that brings us peace from within, you're right, it does radiate all around us, and then we can inherently pass that on to those around us just through our everyday actions and intentions.
When you say radiate,
Yeah.
sometimes that can be described as like an aura.
Yeah, absolutely.
You believe in that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I felt something off you when I met you this morning. Like even just being around you today, really, really
it's
peaceful.
It's like saying when there's that saying of like, feeling the vibe of someone, or like good vibes or bad vibes or a vibe. Like, it's a feeling, it's a presence, it's energy in motion.
It is. And it cracks me up when people go, I don't believe in that woo-woo shit.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like, if you're listening to this podcast, you're being affected by vibrations.
Yeah.
They're all around us.
Vibration makes up everything.
Yeah, your mobile phone only works because of a vibration sent from a satellite.
Yeah.
But we don't want to believe that a human can radiate a vibration.
Yeah. We're thinking really little of ourselves when we put a box around us, or when we put the blindfold on and try to block it all out. And it's funny, this question comes up a lot, in terms of the other work that I do. So I always like to ask people, like, can you see the air that we breathe? Can you see the electricity that powers the computer or the cell phone that you're using right now? You can't see that, but it's there, and you know that it exists. So, it's nothing too out there.
It's really not. I don't know why people are challenged by it. Like, would you say, are you sensitive to people's vibration and energy?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you can feel someone and
you can feel into them, or when I'm close to someone, or thinking about them, or focusing on them, I can feel into how they're feeling or what might be present for them currently. So
has that become more refined over the years?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as a child, it was more sporadic and a bit out of control. And so over the years, through proper practice and training and development, I've learnt how to work with it in ways that support me and support others.
Training and development, like, so you've had a mentor to help
Yeah,
you?
yes, yeah, I've had a few mentors to help me learn to control it a little bit better.
Control it. So have you ever heard the saying, like, highly sensitive people, or HSP?
HSPs, yeah.
Do you feel like you're a HSP? Would you would you describe yourself as a HSP?
I guess so. It's funny. I never really resonated with that term because I felt like, I might be putting myself in a box here if I say that I'm a HSP. But yeah, I guess to a degree you can say I'm a HSP.
Is another term clairvoyant?
Yeah.
How do you feel about that label?
Well, when I think of that word and I think about what people commonly perceive it as, people always say like, "Oh, do you see futures? Oh, do you see this? What do you see for me?" And it's like, well, it's not like that. I don't, I'm not the future guy. It's more like working with your extrasensory perception to experience, whether it be through seeing, feeling, hearing, and thinking. Working with those extrasensory channels to interpret energy and information that presents itself in the world, and whether that be through going within and working with that, or say connecting with someone to work with them and to support them and coach and guide them.
Right. So you have an innate desire to actually use that to help people.
Yeah.
I wonder why. Why do you feel like you want to help people like that?
Well, for me, I was always quite sensitive and quite clairvoyant as a child. And so there were times where throughout my life it felt more like a burden than a blessing as a child, because from say like 9 to 12, 9 years old to 12 years old, it used to keep me up at night because I would be seeing spirits at night, or I would be picking up too much on people's emotions and things, and I wouldn't know what to do with that. And there were other times where, just not knowing who to have those conversations with, and just feeling scared, or feeling like if I told someone, they might think that like I'm weird or broken, and just really not knowing what to do with it gave me this, and then finally shutting it all out in my teenage years. Got into other things, skateboarding, skateboarding, and then started drinking, helped to numb all of those sensations, and then having to do like yoga and meditation as part of rehab from my first knee surgery. It started to switch back on, and I'd be thinking of someone and like they'd show up like in the street that day, or the phone would ring and I'd know who it was and that would be them, or just little things like that. And I thought like I was going crazy, and so I started to seek out like a bit more mentorship and a bit more guidance. And then after that, it was like I did a practitioner level training, and I realized, I can actually work with people and do stuff with this. And so I thought, well, if I can use this to support people with, where they're at in life and where they want to be, then I'm all for it. And then that also branches off into another area where I was doing a lot of work with sensitive and psychic children, because it can be quite distressing for, say, families, especially if their kids are say, seeing things or seeing spirits and they're quite distressed about it, or, you know, they might say like their kids are experiencing things but they don't want to tell their friends or tell anyone because it might make them feel like outcasts. And so working with children and families in this capacity was really stemming from my own experience of growing up and not knowing what to do with it. And I guess we live in a society where we can access a lot more information, and you know, I guess it kind of goes both ways at the moment. But we have access to a lot more information and resources, and I feel like we're at a time where a lot of the judgment and the stigma around these kind of abilities and these kind of ways of expressing and experiencing the world are slowly dropping.
Like, so when you work with someone, you're not necessarily trying to predict the future for them.
No, that's like the last thing I want to be doing for them.
Is it more trying to help them make sense of how they're feeling?
It's more about helping them to get an understanding of where they're at right now, where they want to be, and what blocks they need to clear in order to get there. And so when, say, people consult like a psychic or someone just for like a future prediction, I don't feel like that's empowering, in the sense that, you know, our path or our journey in life is not set in stone. And so we have the power to change all of that based on what intentions and actions and decisions we make. And so I think, say, people working in the field of like, say, being like a psychic or a reader or someone like that, people get a lot of bad rep because of you know, a lot of the things around predictions and stuff like that, because you know, one person might say something and they're just like, oh, but then you said this is going to happen and blah, 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 you know.
Or they kind of shoot themselves in the foot.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then they're like, oh, well, you got it completely wrong.
Yeah.
Like maybe they shouldn't have been so specific.
Yeah. And so I guess it's more like people see it more as a novelty in that sense when it is just a prediction. But I always feel like there's got to be like some kind of healing that comes out of working with someone on an intuitive and a psychic level.
So sometimes if you meet someone, can you often immediately just pick up on their vibration? And so, like, let's say if someone is carrying, like, you know, most people put on a front, like, everything's okay. How are you today? I'm fine. But really, they're dying inside. Yeah. And they've just, you know, been crying themselves to sleep for the last week, or they might be grieving. You know, you don't know. Are you able to just tune into that almost immediately when you meet someone?
I can, but I choose not to.
Really?
Just because, like, if I was doing that to everyone I came across in the day,
right?
Like, it's just an overwhelm of information and sensation.
But do you ever do it as a protective mechanism as well? Like, if you're not sure about someone that you meet, or you're you're hyper interested in someone.
I feel like at times it can be a bit invasive if I do that. So I choose not to, and I choose not to engage in that. But I think to some degree, like, my body innately just picks up on it, without having to dig too deep or, you know, focus too much on a person.
Do you think that's what you've developed, is that listening to the body reaction?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah. I see what you mean with that question. Yeah, absolutely.
What was your vibe when you met me this morning? Don't answer that question.
Pretty cheerful guy.
What about today? Okay, so I'll put it in context. Bit of an overcast, rainy morning, a little bit fresh, but not cold. It's spring. And then we did an ice bath after the breathwork session, but it was like, you know, actually the coldest ice bath I'd been in probably maybe ever, or a very long time. Like, I've done a lot of ice plunge, but it's not the same as actually having ice cubes in the bath, right? And I didn't cope this morning.
Yeah.
I mean, you've seen me. I got to that point of just that it's too unbearable, and I didn't have the mental strength to push through that barrier that comes up. And I've experienced that barrier so much in my life.
Yeah.
Obviously, it actually started when I was a kid playing soccer, and then it went into skateboarding when I was trying to land a trick, and I really want it, and I'm scared, and I'm pushed through that, and then that's what skaters crave when they overcome that barrier, and they finally like commit to the trick and land.
Yeah.
But then this morning, I just got to that point. I was like, nah, and I bailed. It was very similar to just like to kicking my board away after I've caught it, right, on a kickflip or something. Like, analyze that for me. What happened?
Well, so
I wish people could see the look on your face right now.
Well, so you got in, and you had the first time you had your eyes open, and you started engaging in the motions of the breathing, like the short sip in and the long exhales out. And to me, I was thinking, I think he's got this. Like, he started building up a bit of a rhythm. And then we reached about the minute mark, and you're like, I can't do this. I'm like, what? You nearly had that. It's like, it is like that sensation of catching and then kicking out. I was like, oh, he was so close.
How far away was I from stomping it? Or how far away was I from it getting easier?
I reckon another 30 seconds and you would have just been able to cross that tipping point, and you would have like just been like, oh, this isn't that bad after all.
What? And then do you think I could have went 3, 4, 5?
Yeah,
minutes?
absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
So like, that's a fight or flight response I had. Correct?
Yeah, totally.
I was in physical pain though. When I got out of that ice bath, it was different to getting out of other ice baths. Like I was hurting.
Yeah.
Like I was hunched over and I couldn't stand up at first. So yeah, that's my body protecting itself.
Yeah. So you've been holding a lot of tension in the body, and then the body wants to, I guess the mind wants to try and keep you safe as well. Like, let's not go there today. And it starts to come up with all these reasons not to. And
my personal analysis was I think it was too much ego. So we did the breath work stuff, and you were getting us to hold our breath. And like I said, I love holding my breath. And you were, throughout the breath holding, you're telling people to take little sips of air. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm just going to hold the whole time. So I probably did a 2-minute hold at one stage.
Right.
Yeah. And then I'm also like, oh yeah, I've done ice baths before. I've done easy. But I think I think it was really my ego that really, once again, can you believe it? My ego fucked me. I don't know. Is that what you see with other people when they first do it? Is it ego or fear mainly?
Probably. It's a good question. It's probably a bit of both. I think the ego is what tries to keep us safe, so it comes up with these forms or these layers of resistance. So, in the context of, say, whether it be like let's say talking about the breath hold and taking those sips of air in, it's like the ego can come across as like, oh no, I know what I'm doing, I've got this, and then it'll try and do its own thing or run its own agenda. And say when you get in the ice, the ego might say, oh, let's not do this today, let's do it this way. And so I guess that underlying theme is to just go with the flow, but at the same time surrender to the experience of what's being presented in front of you.
Okay.
Like say
That's wise.
Say if someone presents in one way, like that's the way that they do it. That's the way that they do it there. So you just go along with what they're offering there. And so like, say if you were to go to a different group and they do it a different way, like you'd go along with the experience of what they're offering there. So it's like that way you're surrendering into it, and you're not running by like what you think you may already know about an experience.
That's really good.
So that's probably a way to drop into it and to surrender to it more.
Yeah, and I found it this morning. I was having a really interesting moment afterwards because I completely understand the concepts. And I understand the concepts and the layers of resistance. So I knew what I was getting into, but it's still, even though I had that awareness, I couldn't overcome it. That's why I made myself get in a second time, and I got a similar result. Whereas, like, I probably lasted less time, but that by the time I got in the second time, I was already cold in the core to the core. So, but post ice, like, I feel like amazing. So I've got an ongoing shoulder injury. Shoulder feels fantastic this morning after that. So, do you want to just maybe tell people? You know, what are the benefits of ice therapy, or ice bath?
Cold exposure.
Cold exposure. And I know it's quite on trend.
Yeah.
And a lot of places are doing it now, and we've talked a lot about it this morning about how a lot of gyms have recovery centres. But maybe you could break down the spectrum of benefits.
Yeah. So one of the most prominently known benefits about ice baths is that they help with inflammation and blood circulation because of the vasoconstriction that takes place. So it's like all the arteries and the veins close up and then open back up because of the changes, the big drop in temperature and then having to warm back up. And then they're probably like the two main ones I can think of off the top of my head.
So that's physical.
Physical, and they're probably the ones that most like gyms and recovery centers focus on, you know, muscle recovery, inflammation, whatever other benefits they list on their safety sign at the gym. And then I think what really draws me to it is the mental and the emotional and spiritual benefits that come out of doing it. And so that can look like something, say, from building up your mental resilience and being able to apply the principles of staying relaxed and present with the breath and transferring that to other stressful and challenging areas of your life. Say on an emotional level, sometimes when you get into the ice, you can feel really confronted with a range of varying emotions and memories. And so it's like when those come up, you're feeling in a pretty vulnerable place as you're sitting there in the ice and it's cold. And so it's like you've got to breathe your way through it until you find a point of relaxation. And so what that's telling your body and your nervous system is that even though there are these unpleasant memories and emotions that surface, as long as you breathe, you can get through it, and you can find your way through it. And I guess on an energetic and spiritual kind of level, the ice has this ability to freeze old emotions and energy that no longer serve us. And so the way I relate it back to is that there's this old wives' tale of, you know, if someone's bothering you, you write down their name and what it is on a piece of paper and you put it in a glass of water and you put it in the freezer. Have you ever heard that one?
No, but I've got I know a similar one. But
yeah. And so when you think about that principle and you apply it to an ice bath, it's like, well, you think about your intention of what you'd like to release before you get in the ice, and you hold that at the front of your mind, and then you get in. And it's like on an energetic level, it's like you're bringing that to the front, you're bringing it to the surface, and you're freezing that, and you're letting it go in the ice. So that's why I said at the end of the breathwork today, to think of what you'd like to let go of, as when you step in the ice, you're going to let that go.
Nice. So you set some intentions.
Yeah, absolutely.
For it, I love it. I just thought of a funny story, like with the name. So I know someone, I don't want to give it too much context. I just thought it was funny, but it's probably legitimate. She wrote someone's name on a piece of paper who she was having an issue with, had a resentment towards, and would put it in her shoe and be standing on that name. Mm-hmm. To, I guess, maybe symbolise
Yeah.
overcoming
it,
the
stepping on top of it and
stepping on top of it, maybe.
taking new steps towards a solution.
Yeah. I mean, I think resentment is one of the most difficult things for humans to overcome. I think we are all challenged by resentment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Constantly. And you feel like ice can do that, help with that.
Yeah, absolutely. It brings the discomfort to the surface and you learn to find peace, or you learn to enjoy what's uncomfortable.
Yeah. On a physiological level, tell us about the vagus nerve. So today you were like, get deeper, Shannon, in that ice bath. Really cover up that vagus nerve. And I think you're even like pushing some ice on the back of my neck as we're doing it. Stop it.
So the vagus nerve is linked to a lot of our recovery responses, and stimulating our vagus nerve and our vagal tone overall just makes us more resilient and helps us to function better on every level.
So so for those that are not sure, the vagus nerve is a large nerve that runs down the back of your neck from your brainstem.
Yeah, so like down this way.
And across, I guess, from the back to the front, across where your carotid artery is.
Yeah, reminds me of a snake for some reason.
But what is the actual? Do you know what the actual purpose of that nerve is in terms of human function? Is it like a? I mean, I heard it helps with the regulation of emotion, or it sends. I mean, if I had the internet, I could Google that, but maybe if you don't, go and look it up.
Yeah,
but either way,
off the top of my head, I can't think of all of the functions of it. But yeah, it's got a lot to do with our recovery and how relaxed and how rephrase that. It's got to do with like our restorative and relaxation function.
Okay, great. So
in a nutshell.
To shock that's going to.
Yeah, to build up. It's like to build up your resilience muscles.
Okay, God. Because I mean, it feels terrible at first to get cold ice down the back of your neck, like down the back, down your neck, and down the front of your neck. It's like it's shocking. It's like yeah. So
yeah, it can be quite confronting or uncomfortable at first, and then like everything, whether it be learning to ride a bike for the first time, or say drop in on a quarter pipe for the first time, like. You might slip out, you might graze your knees, like whatever it may be, like you learn to get comfortable with it, and eventually it becomes like second nature.
So high school was a challenging time for you socially, but academically, what kind of subjects were you doing in high school? What were your like elective subjects in your senior years? Do you remember?
I did a computers subject. I did business studies, economics, and I liked economics because it was kind of like, it kind of looked at like formulas of how the economy works, and it just seemed so like logical and, flowing. It's something that I have zero interest in now, but it just seemed like it was interesting at the time.
Interesting.
I didn't see myself as a creative person back in high school, so I didn't want to do art. I didn't want to do any of those other subjects like food tech or cooking or woodwork or anything like that. No creative arts. Like I just wasn't feeling it, and I didn't think I was creative. Probably because I didn't like doing art at school when I was growing up in primary and my junior high school years.
Gotcha. How old were you when you started skateboarding?
13.
Oh, nice. Yeah. And it was when was the first time you actually discovered that you wanted to get into it? Did you see someone skating or?
I think it's funny. I always felt like I just wanted to skate. I didn't know why.
Did you see it on like TV or? Did you see the movie Thrashing or Gleaming the Cube or what else?
I didn't see those movies.
Back to the Future?
Yeah, I'd seen Back to the Future, but I don't think that made me feel like I wanted to skate.
Dude, I wanted a hoverboard so bad after that. And then when that Australian hip hopper Seth Century wrote a song called, "Where's my Hey Science, Where's my hoverboard?" Like,
I don't know that song.
Haven't you heard that song? Yeah. It's so good. It's like, it's an old song now, but written in the, I guess, early 2000s. He's like, "Hey, where's my hoverboard?" Like, I really thought there'd be a hoverboard by now. So, I still feel like there should be a hoverboard. But anyway.
I think we had a one-kick board with like a dome on the tail. Like we had one of those boards like from like from a supermarket or something when we were kids. And I think it wasn't until I was about 11 that I started to just like learn how to push around on it. And that thing like would go so slow. Like those supermarket boards have like no bearings, and like you go so slow on them. There's no,
it's like cheap.
You can't really do anything with them. And then my dad got me a board from a bike shop, which is okay to start like learning to ride around on. But again, like the bearings were a bit a bit slow. This board had 2 kicks, and I think it wasn't probably until I was about 13 that I started trying to learn how to actually stand up and like learn to ollie and stuff. And I think at the time the first Tony Hawk's Pro Skater game came out.
I was going to ask about that, yeah.
And like, because my brother had friends who skated, and so my brother had been talking about it, and he had the game, and so I think that's probably what got me into like wanting to learn how to skate properly. But I think even then, like in those days, we didn't really, there was no YouTube back then. I think there were like a handful of kids at the local park. I think that was during the time of like Crank magazine and like ASM.
Yeah, Crank was like a skateboarding and snowboarding mag.
Yeah, and they had covered a bit of surfing.
Yeah.
So my brother would buy those sometimes, and so I'd just look at the pictures and just like wonder what they were doing. Like, oh, that looks pretty cool, I guess.
Nice.
And it's I think just seeing the pictures in the magazines and like just seeing kids skating at Olds Park sometimes like make me like want to learn how to skate.
Nice. Speaking of magazines, you've written a bunch of articles for Slam magazine, which is literally Australia's premier skateboarding magazine, who still make tangible hard copies, which is, print media. Yeah. Keep it alive.
Yeah, they're coming up to their 35th year.
Amazing. I remember when they first started. I mean, I'm showing my age. Oh, maybe not when they exactly first started, but close to.
Yeah.
Insane. But it's like, it's just so great we still have some print media in Australia, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I even though like I am able to access Slam digitally, like on my phone, like it's just not the same as like picking up the magazine and, flipping the pages. And what I find is when I look at it on the phone, like, you have to pinch to zoom in to read the caption and pinch and zoom like all over the place. Or sometimes the photos don't fit on the screen. So you have to swipe to see like the other side of it. And something just so beautiful about just holding the magazine, like smelling the paper and, just being able to read it cover to cover. It's just so much more satisfying.
I feel like you really look at the pictures, deeply. And I'm a teacher, you're a teacher as well. Mm-hmm. I just believe that information does not translate the same from a screen as it does a hardcover book. Like I see with kids learning, when they're learning, they learn better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't remember the context of the research, but I've read a few research papers that were talking about, similar to what you were just saying then, the effectiveness of information gathered from reading something hard copy and retention over, say, reading it off a screen. And I don't know, like, all the factors involved, but I think it might have something to do with the light that comes from the screen.
Yeah.
And the way that we take that light into our eyes.
And must do. I mean, It must be discussed in the primary school realm more than it is, because I'm in high school, you're in primary school.
Yeah.
Because I just feel like, I think those really developmental years in primary school of learning how to read and write, that's when they really happen. So I'd love to hear what the data says. I should research it.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see like what kinds of patterns or trends might be happening, say, in the literacy and numeracy development of kids based on, say, like a screen generation or a book generation. And like, I'm interested to see like how their skill acquisition, like say whether it be in reading, writing or spelling, how that would change as a result of being more reliant on technology.
Thank you. And I've noticed it in my time as a teacher, like student handwriting has just diminished. It's getting worse and worse. And how's this for a need for reform? I mean, in the high school setting, I'm sure it's similar in primary school, but students are required to bring their own device and use laptops for learning. And, all of our work is on laptops. The students use laptops nearly every single lesson. The irony is they do the HSC and it's all written. I mean, I don't know, there's just something not right there for me.
It's quite imbalanced there.
Yeah, they've got to either make the HSC on a computer now or... I remember
I did several years in high school actually.
So you know.
When I worked in special needs, I used to take kids into integration, like into mainstream classrooms. And it's like this one school I was at, like they relied entirely on like their internet server for all their work. So it's like all the work would be uploaded. And to top that off, the internet was shocking. And so there were times where it was quite frequent where the internet wasn't working. And so if the internet wasn't working, the teachers couldn't access their work. And so if the teachers couldn't access their work, the students then couldn't access anything. And so it's just it would just be like kind of like a free period. And that's something that I felt like such a shame for kids to have to experience that. And to them, they might not care, but like you look at it from like a teacher and a parent kind of perspective, like it's like a whole hour they're just wasting, just sitting there like
you
doing
don't get
nothing.
that time back.
You don't get
time's
that time
precious.
And then I guess for working with kids, the kids that I was working with, say, who were on the spectrum, having that kind of unstructured time can be quite problematic and, just cause all sorts of problems, like just for my kids and like for everyone else. And
then they're disengaged, and then you've got to try and get them back online mentally and focused again.
I just felt like the technology in that school was like more of a hindrance than a...
But I've experienced it at every school I've worked at. There's always technology issues. And generally the internet issues, it's either poor connection or the students are having individual connectivity issues with the particular laptop, or then there's the practical stuff like they've forgotten their password, and it's concerning. And I actually, it's good to talk to another teacher. Like, I kind of want to get your ideas on education reform, because we do live in a society where students can access and learn anything they really want to learn if they have the initiative. So they can look up YouTube tutorials in nearly anything. They can ask ChatGPT anything and find answers, or even get ChatGPT to do their work for them, which is really concerning. So I'm just kind of like, or they can Google things, obviously, but I'm just kind of like, well, what's our role now? And I'm kind of feeling, and correct me if you don't agree, but I feel like our job now is to facilitate them on actually how to use those very powerful resources. What do you think? I don't know.
It's interesting because other models of schooling might be heavily inquiry based anyway, and so they were doing this all along just without all the technology involved. So say, now I don't remember like all the names of like the different schooling systems, but probably like say Steiner schools, like there's Steiner, there's Waldorf, there's Montessori. They're all like quite heavy on like self-discovery and, project-based kind of learning. And so they were doing that all along anyway. And so I guess it can get we can feel quite constrained within like our current education system around like all the expectations and all the things that we're expected to do, and all like the standardized testing and
puts more pressure on kids. The kids feel it.
Yeah.
You can say, for example, my son's about to start kindergarten next year and has to do that test. It's called the early start.
Best start.
Whatever. Yeah, and it's, they can say, oh, look, it's just and I see that it's got good intentions. They want to see where your kid's at, and so they can then support them or then extend them. I get it. But fundamentally, you are putting that student in a position where they have to be in a pressure situation. They're going to be in four walls in front of either a computer, in a quite a quiet environment. I don't know, and then that sort of format will continue throughout their whole education. They'll get it all the time, because then they're going to have to do NAPLAN testing.
Yeah,
numerous times throughout there. So I really do identify with those other formats that you mentioned, like Steiner schools and Montessori schools, because I think there's one project can really meet outcomes for maths, science, literacy, English,
absolutely,
whatever, history. So I think it's a good way forward.
Yeah, there's numerous ways to look at different topics, and I guess it can be quite tricky from both perspectives of like in terms of like trying to set a standard of what kids should learn or could learn, and trying to find like ways to get them to drive their own learning.
I agree, but that's my question. Is like, have we overcomplicated it?
Yeah, I think it's definitely. I think so.
Because I was talking to a maths teacher the other day who's literally gone back to textbooks and handwritten exercise books and getting better results. Just working through textbook equations and do this exercise and then find your answers in the back, and then we'll talk about how we got there. Things like that. It's like, I don't know, not very progressive but effective.
Yeah. And I guess there might be limitations in terms of like what certain, like if you want to just hone in on one, say, subject area, like what you can find limitations with, say the scope of what you're trying to achieve.
That's a good point. Hey, can we just go back to the article writing for Slam? How did that come about? Because I love that Slam is doing this there, and can you just give us a bit of a rundown of the type of articles you've been writing for them?
Absolutely. So my first article with Slam came out of I approached Slam asking if I could write an article about breathwork and cold exposure, and Trent from Slam was quite supportive because he's someone that practices breathwork and cold exposure as well.
There you go.
And we just got talking, and I said that I wanted to help to contribute to Slam with material relating to like mental health and like personal development and things that could empower young and old skateboarders of all generations in ways that can support and enrich them. And they've been really on board with that. And so I've written a few articles on things like mental health, goal setting, things about like setting intentions and how to work towards them, and just trying to find ways to relate it to the processes that they might go through in skating. And I feel like when we're skating, we go through a lot of these processes or ideas, but we might not have we might not have the avenues to articulate them, or we might not know what's going on. And so for me, it's a way for me to express bits of the process and to share that with others so that they can understand what they're doing when they're skating and what they're getting out of it and how they can apply that to the rest of their lives.
Rad. It's so good. Such a great progression. I just love where skating's going in terms of the focus on wellness. You know? I mean, that's why skating's progressing. That's why skaters are getting so good. Like I went to Street League a few weeks ago and I mean, those guys are elite athletes on top of their game.
Yeah,
you know,
the stuff they were doing was like...
Did you go?
Crazy. No, I was watching it from home.
Yeah, but it's kind of like, I guarantee, like if you do sit down, so say you sit down with Nigel or Felipe, they would definitely be... I mean, I think I've even seen articles where they do yoga and they're stretching and their diet is refined, and I guarantee they're doing cold exposure and stuff.
Yeah,
like
I'm pretty sure I read that. Yeah, somewhere Nigel had been doing it, and they'd need to be at peak mental condition to perform at that level. Like when you look at the caliber of the stuff that they're doing, like the amount of focus that would take, the amount of practice and coordination that would take. And then on top of that, like outside of skating, like say when they show up at like events and stuff, and like there's thousands of kids that just want their autograph or want to take a picture with them or ask if they can have their board or their hat or their shoes or whatever it is. Like, you'd need a lot of resilience to stay on top of all that and still be able to show up like as your best. And so I'm certain they would have some kind of preparations or work that they're doing on themselves to help them like stay at that level.
So good. That was what stood out for me at Street League, was the way they were able to deal with pressure.
Yeah.
Thousands of people there, filled auditorium, stadium, and thousands of people watching them go through this one trick, and they've got 5 tries at a really hard trick.
The pressure's on, like they're all pushing each other, the time is going down, like the tricks are just getting like more and more insane, like, whether it be like, an extra flip in or a flip out or an extra rotation, like it's just insane. How many people do you think were in the stadium?
I was thinking that, I'm going to say there was probably close 10,000 maybe.
Wow.
Like it was the tennis stadium. It's usually a tennis stadium.
Yeah.
I'd never been in there because I don't really watch tennis or live tennis, but it was such a good venue. Like it was a perfect size for that event. So it was there wasn't a bad seat in the house really. And it was quite steep. So, like it was almost like a Coliseum type vibe, and it was an enclosed roof, and it had like a glass roof, almost like a glass house type thing. So it had really good light in there, and it was awesome. Like I was really impressed actually. So I have been skeptical of Street League in the past. I'm not skeptical of the skaters or their skating, just the format, and I've just personally found it hard to engage with.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying that what they do is not amazing. It just wasn't really resonating with me. But yeah, to see it live, I was like, wow, I hope it comes back.
Yeah.
I really do. Yeah, I'll go again for sure. I want to ask you about your books. So you're an author.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So can we talk about your latest book?
Yeah. So the latest one I wrote is called The Endless Wave, Skateboarding, Death and Spirituality.
Dude, so unique. I love this. Give us a summation of it.
So there's probably tons and tons of books out there. Books, articles, videos, podcasts, and artworks relating to death, dying, and grief, and the emotions that come with it. And
I should watch that.
But how many of those books, articles, and other resources are written through the eyes of skateboarders?
I don't know.
Probably none.
Dude, you found your niche.
And so I guess for me it always felt like it was difficult to find any common ground between the two. Like growing throughout my years skating and just growing up clairvoyant. And I always felt like I had to hide the two, keep them really separate from each other. And being able to write this book, it was like I was able to relate those experiences of life and death and spirituality with processes that I'd experienced in skateboarding. And one of the beautiful things about writing this book was being able to process my own understanding and refine it in a way that skateboarders could relate to. And I guess for me, it's about building awareness and just engaging skaters in those conversations, because I myself have been in situations where it's been quite difficult to know who to talk to or know who to ask or who to reach out to. And you know, when you engage in these topics, usually you're having to reach out to a specific group of people. Like, you know, when you're looking at things from a more spiritual perspective, you wouldn't think to ask skateboarders. Like, you know, skaters don't usually ask other skaters about that stuff, you know, because you might be seen as like weak or you might be seen as weird, or it's just not a common conversation to have. And so, you know, you'd have to go outside of your regular circle to, say, a different group where you might feel like a bit of an outsider and it might be awkward. And so most of the time, I dare say that people don't usually get there to have that conversation. They just bury it or they just stuff it down. So a bit more tension, like we were talking about earlier. And so the way that this book started to come about was just having these deep reflections about, you know, trying to relate the two together, skateboarding, life and death, and spirituality, and just trying to find a way to bring them together. And it's like skateboarding for mystics and mysticism for skateboarders.
I love it. It's so unique. Do you feel like there's an element of like death education?
There probably isn't enough about it. And
in the book?
Oh, I would say yes. There's a lot about death education, and you know, it's written from two different perspectives. In that, I wrote it from the perspective of a medium and my experience of you know, death and dying and the deceased, and maintaining those connections after someone's passed.
Interesting.
And the other half of the book, which was written by Michael Brook, he was the founder of Concrete Wave magazine. But after he sold the magazine, he went on to work as a funeral home assistant. And so he had his whole experience of death through handling like the funeral side of things. And so when we started collaborating on this project, it just felt like a really natural flow to talk about things from his perspective and from my perspective.
So you felt like it was a great collaboration.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that you've tapped into that, because I really feel like there needs to be more death education, because everyone is going to die and everyone's going to experience grief and lose somebody. Mm-hmm. But it's not really like you only learn about it after it happens.
Yeah.
And like I know I've learned a lot from funerals about life, existential. Mm-hmm. Existentially, I've learned so much at funerals, listening to eulogies and grieving and reflecting. Mm-hmm. But in sometimes I wish there was more preparation for it. And I'll be straight, I'm actually like I've had a lot of death in my family and around me, and my mother's getting elderly, and that's going to be a big moment for me when she passes. Mm-hmm. So it's like I'm already like I'm actually preparing myself for it already. Yeah, in advance, because I know that's going to be a big blow, and it's going to most likely happen before me. Mm-hmm. So I'm just very surprised that people can't really maybe learn about it before it happens. Like I don't know, so they can then manage it when it does happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not something that we're taught about, and it's it's kind of like a taboo subject.
A taboo, it is.
And, people don't really know their way around it. And, like you said, you don't really usually find out or learn about death until you experience like a loss
crazy.
of someone.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And so, that was another reason for writing this, and just finding ways to start those conversations to just ease into that process a little bit easier. And it makes me think of a chapter that I wrote in the book relating to the different stages of grief. I related that to a half pipe of grief, because we have different stages. So
dropping in is like being born?
Yeah, so like dropping in is like, starting to become aware that like the acceptance of that, you've lost someone or you've lost something. Like putting your board on your tail on the deck. Putting your front foot on the board, but like, trying kind of umming and ahhing around it. It's like that phase of grief where you might feel where it might not feel real for you, and you're still coming to terms with it. And then those first few times where you drop in and you might bail, or you might run out of it, or knee slide, or whatever it is that you do, like might relate to those stages of like anger or withdrawal, or like you're not fully present, you're not fully with it. And then eventually over time you have that developed ability to drop in, and that's more of that acceptance and that closure part of it. But then what happens next, and this is like an added on stage of grief that goes beyond that regular 5-step model, is like a half pipe. You've dropped in, you're ready, and you're riding up to the next wall. What are you going to do next? So then what I've added into that is connection, and this is where that continued or sustained connection with the other side comes in. And then, it's like a half pipe. And so it's like an analogy that even if you lose someone, they're not truly ever gone, because we're all emotionally based beings. And so based on that, we can continue our relationship and our connection with our loved ones. And, even when they pass or when they cross over.
How? Give us some practical applications to that.
Mm-hmm. And so what that could look like is like celebrating their special days, or asking for like a dream visitation, and being able to feel into those memories and those emotions, but also being able to feel into their energy, because it's still very much there, even if you've lost them. You can feel them when they're there, like they might suddenly come into your thoughts, and that's them sending you some mental energy. And you can connect with them through doing things that remind you of them. And it's like every time you feel a presence or an awareness that of something reminding you of them, it's like you're still connecting with them, their essence. And it's a very empowering and very nourishing kind of feeling.
Right. I like to hear this. It's really good. Because sometimes I think I have very vivid dreams. I don't know what your knowledge is on interpreting dreams, but I have very vivid dreams, sometimes of people who have passed. And I do wake up wondering if that's like a connection, a visit.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
because when we're asleep, it's like our logical thinking part of our mind is offline, and it's like they're able to energetically, they're able to reach us, and sometimes it can involve them passing on a message, or it can involve feeling a sensation or feeling their presence, and it just feels so real.
So their spirit lives on?
Yeah, the spirit lives on.
You believe that?
Absolutely. So I think I wrote another chapter in there about that. And it's like changing your skateboard, You think of our body like a skateboard.
Hell yeah, dude.
And then it's like
friggin' flesh suit.
yeah, flesh suit. So when we're done with the skateboard, we get a new one, but the skater still stays the same. So like the skater is like the soul, and the skateboard is like the body.
Yeah.
So you just keep, when your board's finished, you go out and you
New
look
setup.
Yeah, new setup. So
What if you treated the previous setup bad? Does that mean your next setup's going to be like a Kmart brand shit setup with bad bearings?
I'm not sure. I haven't quite got there yet with that one.
I don't know. Maybe. Who knows?
Who knows? But yeah, that's some food for thought. Like, the spirit lives on, and it's like once we're out of this body, our consciousness travels to another plane.
Like where? Heaven?
I wouldn't say heaven as such, like as this place that we go upwards, but think about it as like radio bands or bands of frequency. Mm-hmm. And it's like when we leave our body, it's like we become a lot lighter.
Yes.
And so because we're in a body physically, our energy is much denser. It's like when we leave that, we're actually a lot freer. So it's just like we kind of mesh and merge into. So it's like we're still here, but we're not here.
Okay. So wait up. So do you think we go to another body and stay in this world, in this metaverse, universe?
It's like
cosmic atmosphere.
It's like we leave the body, and it's like if we could peel all these. It's like if we could open a doorway, we would just slip through. It's like
going to a nicer place.
Well,
putting you on the spot here.
Sorry.
By the way, I'm not trying to put you in a position where I'm not expecting you to be an expert on this.
Oh no,
I'm just kind of challenging it a little.
Yeah, absolutely,
in a nice way.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't believe in like a heaven as like a place that we go to, but it's like heaven is more of like a state of being, and so it's like when someone passes, they live out their version of heaven. So it's like the things that make them most happiest is what they'll be gravitating towards. So like in the sense of say, let's say a father loses his children. This father, when he passes, he might hang around his children a lot, not because he's stuck and he can't move on, but he's hanging around because that's his idea of heaven, and that's what makes him happiest. So he wants to watch over the family.
Interesting.
Or like say if, let's say for example, a school teacher that's really passionate about her job, and school is what made her really happy. When she passes, she might hover and stay around the space where her school was, because that's her version of heaven. So
until she feels ready to move on. Until
she feels ready to say move on to the next place, or go into the next phase of learning in her in their soul journey.
So I'll be straight. I like the idea of going to a nice place, because I don't want to be. This world's. I'm sorry. This world's terrible. Like what's going on in this world is disgusting. The way the world is turning out, and the way humans are behaving on a global scale. I just don't. It sounds really negative, but I mean, this is on the back of what's going on worldwide: wars, famine, terrible stuff, genocide.
Yeah.
Like, is this the place I really want to be hanging around? So I think. It's only been in recent years that the concept of heaven seems to appeal to me, and I'm like, well, I don't really have the answers. I do like that story sounds pretty rad to me.
Yeah,
so that's just where I'm at with it. Because I like what you're saying too. Like, it feels similar to like the reincarnation type thing that Hindus sort of adhere to.
Yeah.
So, but I sort of also get the sense you're not saying there's a right or wrong, right?
No, and I think like, whatever someone makes as their path, then I think it's like underlying everything. Their intention is there, and so that's what they'll pursue, or that's what they'll experience.
Gotcha. Interesting.
So it's like many paths up the same mountain.
Dude, half pipes in the sky. Is that what's happening for us?
Yeah, definitely.
Although I'm trying not to skate transition. I made a conscious decision a few years ago to skate less transition. Mm-hmm. And I was saying the other day to my friend that like when I force myself at my age to skate flat ground or ledges, I feel like it keeps me young. Even though like my ledge game is very limited and so is my flat ground game.
Yeah.
I feel like the day I start skating trannies all the time, that's when I'm old.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of those guys. Like I remember seeing a lot of those guys growing up, like padded up and, or rock up with their stereo and they're, rocking up in their utes and the esky full of beers and just skating the bowl.
Are you a bowl guy?
I don't think I have the board for it, and I feel like
mini ramp guy.
I think I try and skate everything, but like my board is probably more suited just for the streets.
I'm thinking 8 1/4 wide. Is that kind of vibe?
I grew up on 7.75.
So did I. Same.
So I think the widest I've ever had is like 8.125.
Same, dude. I ride 8s
because they don't sell them that small anymore.
You can't get 7.75
unless you buy like a kid size, and kid size is considered 7.75.
Exactly. Yeah, no, you can't get 7.75s like you used to. Like I ride 8s, and once I got an 8.125, and I was like, oh, this thing's so big, I can't flip it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm really locked into that. Hey, just one last question is, we're going back to the fear thing. You were talking about the analogy of dropping in on a vert ramp, and I was talking about it with one of my past guests, Sally Affleck, how that is like such an ultimate trust activity. The first time you drop in on vert, you put your board over the edge, and because of the vert, you actually can't see part of the transition because it's so steep, and you really just have to like put your foot on the front and press down and just have faith in the fact that there is a ramp there and you're going to go down it, and you've got to commit. And any hesitation, you really get very little recourse. You're going to get hurt if you don't commit. So, and very similar to maybe what happened to me this morning in the ice. But what kind of breathing techniques can a skater use when they're in a fearful situation? They're trying to commit to a difficult trick, something that's scaring them. Could be a big set of stairs, could be a handrail for some of the more pro guys, or it could be just your average Joe trying to 50-50 a small hubber at a skate park. Like, what can they do?
Yeah, I think beforehand it might be nice to, say before you're even rolling up to the obstacle, it'd be good to get yourself into a more relaxed kind of state, because you roll up to something big, it's gonna unnerve you, right? You're going to feel it through your body. So maybe something like breathing in through your nose and blowing out through your lips. Just like that. In through the nose and blowing out through your lips. Those long, slow exhales with nice control over it can help you to stay in a relaxed parasympathetic state, which can help to slow down the nervous system. So you might want to do that. And then maybe you might follow that up with, say, some box breathing, because, let's face it, the elite military and Navy SEALs use box breathing to stay focused and keep their head in the game and think about all the pressure that they're going under. So it might be like a breathing rhythm of in for 4, holding for 4, breathing out for 4, and holding for 4. And then with practice, you would build that up. So in for 5, hold for 5, out for 5, and hold for 5. And gradually build that up. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And what happens is the beauty of box breathing, as you're increasing the length of the inhale, the hold, the exhale, and the hold, you're building up more focus, more resilience every time. And it's a really nice balancing kind of breathing technique for you to get into before you're actually starting that process of rolling up, beginning to test it out a few times. And then while you're actually skating, I would recommend just trying to stick with nose breathing as much as you can. Close your mouth.
Interesting.
It's like we were saying before, when you're breathing through your mouth predominantly, you're engaging your sympathetic nervous system. You're speeding up everything, your heart rate. You might sweat more if you're breathing fast. You might gas out if you're breathing like that for too long. And it's like, if you're trying a trick for a while and let's say you're getting a bit huffed and puffed from trying over and over and over, and say your breathing starts to get faster, sometimes you can start to feel a bit lightheaded or a bit shaky. You might start to feel really thirsty as mouth breathing dries up all the saliva and it dehydrates us quicker. And so there's so many reasons why it would be beneficial to just close your mouth and breathe through your nose when you're actually skating, like whether it's rolling up to those stairs or trying that handrail or that small harbor or whatever it is you're skating. Just close your mouth, shut your mouth, and nose breathe.
Shut your mouth and nose breathe.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to call this episode. So don't drink like 3 coffees before a skate and then try and fight kids on scooters, which is what I do. Actually, I'm actually, on a side note, I'm going to slow down with my coffee intake before skates, because I am noticing that, when my heart rate starts to get up, or if I'm trying to focus on a trick, I feel this jitteriness.
Yeah.
So, more calm. But I'm definitely going to do that. I'm going to do it today.
Give it a try and, let me know how you go.
A bit of breathing before the session, and then during the session, try to breathe through your nose.
Yeah. Yeah, and
I love that.
This is what I do when I work with athletes and, like people in the gym and stuff, and do the sports performance workshops. There's a lot of emphasis on breathing through the nose and a lot of emphasis on just learning to train through nose breathing only. And when there's that build up of intensity, it can be quite common to feel like you want to open the mouth. But see mouth breathing as like the turbo that you can access when you need to go a little bit faster, or when you need that extra burst of energy. But at the end of that, you also need to know how to come back into a zone of optimal kind of breathing so that you don't overexert yourself.
Interesting.
So mouth breathing when exercising, whether it be training, like, cardio or whatever, or skating, could be seen as like the nitro. It's like you're going to go all out, but just be prepared to gas out if you go too far.
But it's interesting because I do it when I train vigorously, and I used to do it a lot when I was boxing training, and when you're sparring, especially when you start to get tired, you start to open your mouth. And they talk about it in the UFC a lot, so I like to watch that. Fighters get tired and they start to mouth breathe, and then the irony is that it makes them more vulnerable to get knocked out because their jaw becomes more vulnerable. Yeah. Because their chin's open, and then if they get hit there, they can get rattled easier and they get knocked out easier. So it's a very good point. So only use the mouth as your little turbo when you're really going for it.
But see if you can find stability to slow the breath down.
And knock it there.
So a good tip for when you're feeling like, you really need to breathe harder, or say when it's getting more demanding and you need to kind of reset your breath. Let's say you've been having an intense training session, or you've been skating hard for a while, and your heart's starting to beat faster, and you're on the verge of opening your mouth. Like when you're like, and like, and you're like huffing and puffing, and you're like, eventually you'll be on the floor. It's like just before you reach there, just take 2 nice deep, try and bring it back to the nose. Take 2 nice deep breaths in and out through your nose. and then take the next one in, and nice and slow.
So you think, oh
And
God, I could
you'll
just
find
see
that-
your whole face just went, ooh, like it melted calm.
And you'll find that your body will know how to reset itself if once you've done those 2 fast breaths and then the nice slow controlled one afterwards.
Interesting. I'm so doing it at the gym next week, CrossFit, because I find sometimes, like especially when I do interval style training, like you know, if you've got a short break in between your next lap or whatever it is, it's just like, but it's just like, no, I should be using that time to really just like, no matter how exerted I feel, focus on the breath, calm the breath.
Yeah.
Okay.
So try those 2 fast breaths and the slow breath at the end.
Doing it. Such good advice.
Yeah, and then outside of your training, because how you breathe outside of your training will influence how you breathe or your lung capacity or your aerobic capacity outside of your training. Just find moments in your day where you can just really concentrate on just breathing low, less, and slow. Low into the diaphragm.
Low into the diaphragm. Check.
Breathing low. So breathing less and breathing slow. So it doesn't mean like holding your breath and not breathing, but just meaning like try to lower the amount of times you're breathing a minute.
Yes.
So lengthen your inhales, lengthen your exhales.
Slower the breath, the longer your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, brother. So good. Where can people find your book?
At the moment, I'm waiting for my preview copy, and then after that, I'll start processing and sending out orders. I'm gonna handle them all by myself. So, probably the best way for people to find it and to find me is through my Instagram page.
Instagram, the gram.
Yeah.
Okay, what's that? What's your handle? What's it called?
It's Nathan Star Ho.
Starho.
Yeah, Nathan Star Ho.
Okay.
All one word.
So your actual, is Star your middle name?
It was a middle name derived from the initials of 4 of my friends' names.
Because there's another Australian skater, Nathan Ho.
Yeah, there is
Sydney.
another one. Yeah, people always got us mixed up.
Yeah,
I'd always get people mixed up.
I wonder what he's up to. He's around Sydney.
I think he's still living in Maroubra. Last I heard,
He was the king.
He has a kid now, and
He's the king of SDS, that guy.
Yeah, it's funny. People would always get us mixed up. And when I was like 13, I remember. Do you remember like you used to be able to send a self-addressed stamped envelope with like $1 or $2 to skate companies, and they'd
send you
stickers. So I sent some to SMP once when I was like 13, and Glenn Scott sent me some stickers back with a note saying like, "Oh, I have a mate named Nathan Ho." And I was like, "Oh wow!" And so like I always remembered that, and I was like, "Yeah, one day I'm going to meet this guy." And I just put that intention there, and like. Yeah, it was so crazy when Nathan Ho was working at 99 Degrees. Like I met him one day. I'm like, oh, holy shit, it's you. Like, so we've always had this kind of funny kind of friendship where we see each other and like, oh, hi, me. Like,
yeah. I met a guy not too long ago. We were just getting along really well, and then he was like, we discovered that we both have the exact same birthday.
Oh wow,
same year, same day,
pretty cool,
same month. I was like, yeah, man. Some sort of connection going on there.
Yeah, it's all vibration.
Anyway, man, what a pleasure. Thanks for such a rad day, bro.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Mr. Nathan Star Ho, everybody.